Hey YouTube, we are at Famous Reading Outdoors before the COVID-19 stuff, and this is the map right here. We are at Locust Cap right now, down I think where it says no trespassing in the lower part of the map. Basically that's AOAA, and we have permission to be in that area, but it is below Route 901 if anybody's wondering where this footage was shot. Anyway, so today I'm going to talk about FRS and GMRS radios. It's these little walkie-talkies. There's a picture of them. Those are like the ones that we have. And what I discovered this weekend just looking around is actually Jeep Jamboree, which is like one of the big jeeping organizations, is switching over from CBs to GMRS and FRS radios. So if they're doing that, then probably there'll be a big swing in the industry at some point for people to actually start using these radios, and these are much better radios than CBs. CBs are pretty awful. A CB is basically an AM radio, and these are basically FM radios. And if you obviously in your car, nobody listens really to AM anymore. Most people listen to FM because it sounds so much better. So being able to talk on FM, obviously is a big plus. And obviously you can tell that it'll sound better, and it'll be clearer, and it'll just generally work better. Most of the radios on the market are this style, and you can buy them pretty much all over the place. I've seen them sitting at Home Depot. I've seen them at Best Buy. I've seen them at like even Walmart, I think. Get them on Amazon. There are these little tiny radios, and they have some numbers on the front of them, and I'm going to try to explain to you a little bit of the differences and then what the numbers mean. Hey, so what's the difference between FRS and GMRS? So FRS basically means that like anybody can use it. GMRS means that you're supposed to get a license. It's like $70, and then it lasts for 10 years, and you get more capability. What the radio itself is basically the same exact radio, and what makes it even more confusing is the amount of power that you can transmit, which controls largely a lot of how strong the signal comes in and how far it will go, is based on whether or not you're FRS or GMRS. And there's like a couple different ways these radios control that. On the radio, like you saw the Motorola's, they have two buttons on the side. One button is like the low power button, and one button is a high power button, and you're supposed to know the difference between which button you push because based on whether or not you have a license or not. And largely seems like people just sort of ignore that. I don't think that there's anybody hunting people down. I mean, the FCC would hunt you down, but I don't think that really people care so much because like the power is so low on these things. But please be responsible, obviously. Then the other difference is there are some different channels that you get if you're GMRS that you're not supposed to use if you're just FRS. And largely the way that the radio manufacturers do that is you have to go into the menu options and you push the buttons in the menu, and then it gives you access to the other frequencies. But initially the channels aren't there when they just mail you the radio until you go into the features and you push the buttons to turn them on. And so like I said, the big difference is the amount of power you get, and then you get a couple extra channels. And then lastly, if you didn't notice, if you have an external antenna, then you're supposed to be GMRS. And then also if you use what's called a repeater, which means that you transmit on one frequency and then you listen on another, which makes it so you can transmit to a super powerful radio that's on top of a mountain, and then it can rebroadcast for you on the other frequency that it's supposed to be GMRS because obviously it's higher power. So as ethical as I want to sound, I mean, if you read the fine print, if you're GMRS, you're supposed to give out your broadcasting ID every 15 minutes while you're talking or whatever. I've never heard one of those ever used, and I've used these radios and heard people use these radios a lot. I've seen entire clubs use these radios for over a week, and I've never heard one of these broadcast IDs. So yeah, I think everybody sort of uses them like their FRS radios, but they use a power range of the GMRS, as stupid as that sounds. And I don't think there's really anybody out there that's hunting you down to stop you from doing that, although I will probably get some hams or whatever mad at me for saying that. But that's what I sort of see as the usage pattern of these things. Hey, so here's a big giant table that is going to be a little bit confusing to try to clarify it a little bit more. So this is like FRS versus GMRS, and on the FRS on the left-hand side, you're going to see channel like 1 through 22, and then you're going to see FRS power, and then some of them are going to say 2 watts, and some of them are going to say half a watt, which is like basically how powerful you can transmit. GMRS pretty much like is the same frequencies like I was saying, which makes it confusing. So if you go over a couple columns, you'll see GMS power, and you'll see that you can use 5 watts instead of 2 watts. And then on the lower ones, you can even use 50 watts instead of 2 watts. So it's like way more powerful. There's that small little range in the middle, like where it's the same amount of power, half a watt. And I don't really know why they picked to say that only those frequencies could be half a watt. But I sort of reduced, probably because it would cause interference with something that's important. And then you see kind of at the bottom, there's like a section that's grayed out that says NA on the FRS section, and then there's the GMRS ones that are 50. And if you look really carefully, you're going to notice that the bottom block actually repeats the upper block a little bit. The bottom block is a repeat of frequencies. It basically is the exact same sets of transmit frequencies as the ones above it. You're going to say, oh Nathan, but it's, the number's 5 off. That's because it's showing you like the receive frequency, I believe. So obviously when you use a repeater, you would be transmitting on like the 462 and receiving on the 467, and those are just showing, like the table is showing you the other half of the duplex frequency. So anyway, basically what I'm just saying is like the GMRS is obviously like way better, but usually when you buy the radio, it's like the exact same radio, and just a matter of like, do you push like the upper button or the lower button? And normally, because like there's so many frequencies here, some of the radios kind of like do the channel layouts like differently, which makes it even more confusing. This is the Motorola one, for instance. The Motorola one that I have, which was the ones I showed you, and I think this applies to all the Motorola's basically. They have channels like 1 through 22, and then, like I was saying, if you enable the duplex frequencies, the bottom ones just repeat, so it gives you like 15 through 22 again, but it puts an R on them. On other radios, like those actually have numbers, okay? And then the weather channels actually have numbers too, so you have like 1 through 4 twice, and then 15 through 22 like twice, but that's the way they decided to do it on this radio. On other radios, sometimes like these upper frequencies, which are the more powerful ones, are done even like slightly differently. Like sometimes they'll put all the FRS ones like 1 through 7, and then they'll put the GMRS ones like on their own like numbers, whatever. So the numbers can get a little bit wonky. Somebody could be like, I'm on channel 7, and maybe they are on that radio, but on your radio it may not be channel 7. The thing that can make it even more confusing is what these call privacy codes or interference codes. And so that's like a noise that the radio makes, like when you transmit. Think of it like a dog whistle, and nobody can really hear it except for the other radio. So if you put your radio on like privacy code 24, then only the other radios that are on privacy code 24 are going to like play it, but it doesn't encrypt your message at all. Somebody could actually turn the privacy codes off completely, and they'll be able to hear all the conversations, but you won't be able to hear them. The only way that like you can hear each other, like if you want to talk to each other, is if it's set to 24 when you transmit and when you listen. So usually on a lot of the radios, you'll see, like I was showing in the original picture. So here's back to the original radio. You can see that this one is on channel 22 using the privacy code 121, and for the most part to use it, you just push a button on the side and talk. Like it's not really that hard at all, other than understanding that there's certain frequencies that you can use more power on than others. And on the radio itself, a lot of them have a different color little icon on there to let you know if it's a high power one or not, if you forget. And on these Motorola's, like if you see like a bold little radio, then you know that it's a high power one, and if you see like a light colored radio icon on it, then it's a low power one. So to get past all this confusion, how do I set up my radio? Like that's the big kind of question. So there is a scan option. So when you meet somebody in a parking lot, if you just have them hold the side button on the radio down to like the push to talk for like say 5 seconds or 10 seconds, you can push scan on your radio, and your radio will find theirs, and it will put on the display typically what channel they're using and what the privacy code is for your radio. And so you'll see like that 7 121 or whatever the number was, and then you can just basically like push a button and your radio will be on the same as theirs. So usually I just use the scan option. Like, that's the easiest way, because half the time, like, when they tell you which one they're using, like, you can't even put that in your radio unless you know like all this like jargon stuff about which one's theirs and which one's yours. I just use scan, and if you find that out on the trail, you just put it on scan, you drive around behind them, and then at some point, like, you hear them talk and you can look at the radio and see which one they're on. So anyway, please like and subscribe. Hopefully all this helped out.